The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon and good morning for some of you. Welcome to the latest installment of the Atticus Advantage webinar series, the Solo Practice Profit Scorecard. My name is Jeff Hines. I'll be doing the introduction, introing Steve and wrapping things up today. And before we get started, a quick short bit about Atticus. Atticus was founded in 1989 to provide support and accountability programs for lawyers and law firms that effectively increase gross revenues, reduce stress, develop greater career satisfaction, and allow more time for family and personal interests. And actually, all of the programs, workshops, and webinars that we do are designed to streamline the management of your practice and thereby create the increased revenue, reduced stress, and balanced life. Before we begin, a little bit about your ability to interact with us. You might have questions that come to mind throughout the course of the webinar. We certainly encourage you to ask them. You have a few options. First, you can use the chat function on your GoToWebinar dashboard to send me a message. Most of you probably have this on the right-hand side of your screen. If you'd like the question to remain anonymous, simply indicate so in the message. Or you can click the hand icon, indicate you have a question or comment. I'll call on you, unmute you, and then you can speak for everyone to be able to hear. Before I officially introduce Steve, a little bit of background about him. He helps attorneys grow their practices. He's got a way of helping them when they're stuck and guide them through a process of self-discovery and major breakthroughs. He's a shareholder in Atticus. He created the Practice Growth Program, the Dominate Your Market Program, and the Double Your Revenue Workshop. And prior to joining Atticus, he built and sold his own practice. He's written 7 books, won a national award for practice innovation, and written a national column on practice management. So with that, I think we can officially begin. Steve, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you. Welcome.
I'm ready, Jeff. Thank you. And if you haven't hit record, are you recording the call?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure we're good. I didn't see it recording on my end. So terrific. So welcome, everybody. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the great introduction. So welcome to this webinar, this series of the Atticus Advantage webinars. This is one of my favorite things to do because I get to talk to people that are not part of the Atticus family yet. I know we have some Atticus clients and members of our groups programs that sneak on these calls. If you're out there, hello. But if you're new to us, this is really an opportunity for us to talk a little bit to you about what we do, how we do it, and at the same time, really try and help you connect on what we can do today, immediately, at no charge to you, at no cost to you, really. Immediately improve your practice. And that's what today's webinar is about. All the Atticus Advantage webinars are really designed for you as someone who's trying to grow a practice. We work in a solo and small firm niche to help you think about how to improve your practice today. Now, the Solo Practice Profit Scorecard can be downloaded right off your dashboard. So those of you that have the GoToWebinar dashboard on the right-hand side that Jeff talked about, or that was talked about earlier, you can download the Excel version of this, so you can actually type along, put it up on another screen as you go along, and keep score, and we can talk about it. We also have the PDF version. And so I've done both. I've done the Excel version, and I've also done the PDF version where I've handwritten the score, how I'm doing in my practice. But ultimately, it gives you the capability of, following along and using this tool to self-assess. So go ahead and take a moment to download that. The Practice Growth Diagnostic and Time Management handout we'll discuss later. That's a special offer or gift I've got for you towards the end of the call. But you don't need that now. You can download it now if you want, but it's no big deal. Great. So hopefully you're doing that. If you're printing it out, run to the printer, print it out, whatever you need to do to make this a very effective workshop or webinar for you. It's kind of a virtual workshop for me. I love doing these. So my intention, my first intention is to help you create a framework for your mindset to think about the future of your practice. So one of the biggest things that I've learned, and I'm creeping up on my 30th year of practice. Some of you know that I've done 10 years of trial work. I have over 100 trials, believe it or not, under my belt. And then I did 10 to 15 years of estate planning, elder law, and corporate work, and successfully sold my practice in 2010, but I still have a hand in a practice now with a partner that's really, doing very well. And, the framework of thinking is really probably the biggest barrier in helping lawyers grow their practice. Sometimes I hear lawyers say, well, the market's so competitive, my services are getting commoditized, there's nothing I can do. And if their framework of thinking about their life and their business is like that, then it's totally true for them. The interesting thing is I have a lot of younger lawyers that are not as biased. They come in and they're like, the world's my oyster. They have an abundance mindset. There's so many opportunities for them. And they just go into the marketplace and just do a phenomenally great job. And the only distinction between the two types of lawyers is the mindset, how they bring their thinking to their practice. How are they thinking about their practice? How are they thinking about growth? How are they thinking about opportunity? And while that sounds really, really basic, the sad truth is, it is pretty basic. And the thing that gets in most lawyers is how they think about their practice, and whether they think things are possible or impossible really sets their mindset about the growth of their firm. So it's really a big challenge to help lawyers think and hopefully improve how they think about their practice. So that's one thing, help you first and foremost create a framework. Number two is to help you compare your best performances currently against what we consider in our company best practices or suggested best practices. So when we go through the scorecard, we're going to compare what we consider best practices against probably what we would say are industry norms. And the industry norms are pretty obvious when we walk through this. And then some things that are just, if you're doing, we're going to recommend that you stop doing them because they're either ineffective or going to hurt you or cause you pain. So we'll walk through that, and we'll walk through each element of the scorecard. We'll spend some time on it and have you think about it and assess where you're at today. With that said, let's talk about this for a moment. So up on your screen is really what I consider, our company considers, the foundations for growth. So if you're a solo and small firm practitioner and you're trying to grow your practice, your legal skills are the foundation of your practice. And you have to be a good lawyer. Not necessarily have to be a great lawyer, interestingly enough. You just have to be a good lawyer, and a good lawyer who can execute well on taking great care of their clients and taking great care of their team will sometimes be far more effective than a great lawyer who does a terrible job taking care of the clients and a terrible job taking care of the team. And when I look at growing a firm and people ask me, what are the ways to grow a firm? I usually say, look, you have your legal skills, which is a critical skill. Don't get me wrong. Don't hear me saying anything other than your critical skills are crucial. But if you're looking to grow your practice, there are four critical elements. First is your time management skills. So the time management skill of getting you probably from $100,000 growth to $300,000 growth is one set of skills. From $300,000 to maybe $800,000 in gross revenue as a solo practitioner is a different set of time management skills. From $800,000 to $1.5 million to $1.8 million as a solo practitioner is another set of time management skills. $2 million to $5 million is another set of skills, and then on up in growth, there are different time management and leadership skills that are critical to taking the firm up in gross revenues. And yes, there are solo practitioners that do those types of numbers. They really have improved their time management and focusing skills differently than how other lawyers have. That's why they produce the results. Two is your client development and marketing skills. And first and foremost, these are skills. These are not God-given innate talents. While some people have freakishly gifted talents in some of these areas, most people, myself in particular, have learned and developed these skills the hard way, going out and doing them, learning how to get better at them, how to improve them, learning from mistakes. 3 is building a great team. Now, this is the blind spot for most lawyers. I say that most lawyers get stuck around $1 million in gross revenue because they can't get over this spot. This is the hump. This is the invisible wall that they keep hitting against and can't figure out. And that's how to find, hire, manage, lead, hold accountable a really great team. Not a good team, not an average team, but a great team. And that's really, for a lot of law firms, the big secret, that's the secret formula, the secret sauce to growth is really having a great, phenomenal team. And then last but not least, is cash flow and profitability. I always joke that as a lawyer, a lot of us go to law school to avoid math, and then consequently end up having to confront the fact that we need to understand math. And cash flow and profitability is a critical component of that. How do you manage your firm to maximize the profits, maximize cash flow, so you can pay for your great team and you can live the lifestyle that you really want to live? So as we look at that, these are 4 critical skills, and these will impact your revenue, your income, your sense of control, your freedom, and your impact in the community. So these things are pretty critical. And anyone that I've worked with or coached, or any of our other practice advisors I have the pleasure of coaching, will tell you these are the 4 critical skills. There's a whole bunch of other skills we can talk about, but these are the 4 cornerstone skills that if you don't focus and develop, you probably won't get past go in the growth of your firm. Great. With that said, let's talk about the scorecard. So what are we scoring? Well, interestingly enough, we're going to talk about profitability and cash flow because, as I said, that's one of the key elements. 2, time management. Well, interestingly enough, there it is again, time management and focus management. And we'll talk about how to score that. 3, we're going to talk about what it takes to build a great team, some distinctions around that. Then we're going to have process and workflows. What are your process and workflows like and how to score that? Marketing to new prospects. What is your, how do you score on that will be critical. And then marketing and conversion process. And then what's your mindset? That'll be the last thing that we'll probably score and have a discussion about today. So these are probably, from my viewpoint, the core elements that we're going to have you think about, framework, and play with today as we go through this. Now, why do we do a scorecard? We could lecture off of all this stuff, but there's tremendous levels of research and support that show that the more you measure something, the more successful you can be at improving it. And Peter Drucker, who's probably one of the greatest management gurus of the past 100 years, basically said that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And we can go back to Pearson's Law, who was probably the first measuring guru in the management the management world during the Industrial Revolution. He was the guy who really started kind of the manufacturing process as a concept, studying it. So anyhow, any time that you're learning to think about how to grow your practice, learning how to think, one of the best things to do is really just assess where you're at and come up with a measurement process. So we do this Solo Practice Scorecard in our group programs. We do it in our upper level programs, Dominate Your Market. So we use this as kind of really helping everybody benchmark how they're doing and score against what we consider best practices. So with that being said, let's do some thinking and math to look at your practice in its current state. So if you haven't downloaded the scorecard from the GoToWebinar dashboard, please go ahead and do that for me now. So if you haven't done it, go ahead and score it because it'll be a lot easier for you. Now, as you're looking at the dashboard or looking at the scorecard, you're going to notice on the far right-hand side 3 columns. One is current, which is what your current score is. One is prior, and then the other one's tracking change. So we use a scorecard typically to have people self-assess where they're at today, where they were at previously, and tracking what changed, whether that's a positive change or negative. So that's the framework of the scorecard. So if you do the scorecard today, you may in 90 days or 6 months do the scorecard again and measure how you're doing and see where you're at. You may find out you're progressing in some areas, and I've had people regress in other areas because of things that happen in their practice or things that happen in their life. So that's the framework. People always get confused about that. The other thing people get confused about when doing this is the 1, 2, 3. So when I go through this, you're just going to have to make your best estimate of whether you think you're on the upper end of a score or on the bottom end of the score. And just remember, and this is a really easy thing to say, but it's a tougher thing to do, all progress begins when you tell the truth about something. And I'm not looking at this, Jeff's not looking at this, you know, Larry, Daniel, Denise, people on our client services team are not looking at this. You are. You're looking at this. And you have to tell the truth about this if you want to make progress. If you want to lie about it, that's totally fine. Delusion works really well for a lot of people. I know a lot of people that are delusional about their practice, delusional to a certain extent about where they're at in life, but it works for them. It's kind of like a wonderful blanket that they wrap their heads around, you know, and hide in. They feel better about it. If you're on this call, I don't think you're that type of person. That type of person would never need to do this type of call. But wherever you're at, just do your best at telling the truth about it, because that's really where progress begins. Okay, with that, let's go to work. So let's go ahead and work on profitability and cash flow. And I'm going to walk through each column and talk about it a little bit. We've got plenty of time in the discussions where the thinking's at. So let's just kind of spend a few minutes about this. So first, under the profitability and cash flow, I constantly feel stressed about my cash flow and don't think I'm paid enough for the work that I do. This is an important score, because if you're worried about cash flow and you don't feel like you're paid enough for the work that you do, you start to develop resentment. And when you start to develop resentment towards your law firm, you start to develop contempt for it. And once you develop resentment and contempt for your law practice, the ball game's over. It's just a question of when. Because if you have contempt and resentment towards your practice, you're now in an abusive relationship with your own law firm, and you feel like you're being a victim. And once you feel like you're being a victim to your own law firm, which you created and you run and you operate, by the way, right? Then you're just going to try and find ways of getting out of the practice. You're going to find ways of no longer doing this because it's suffering for you. It's miserable. So if you're there mentally, then you're probably a 1, 2, or 3. It's just the question of how you feel about that. 4, 5, and 6, I make a good living and I'm not stressed out about cash flow. You know, like I'm not stressed. You know, I make a good living. I'm happy with the income I make, and I'm not worried about the cash flow. I'm pretty good. 7, 8, and 9, I pay myself a great base compensation. Additionally, I make a 35% profit margin as a shareholder. So what I mean by that, let's talk about the first definition of great base compensation. Great base compensation means that if you were to replace yourself as a lawyer, what would you have to pay to find a lawyer at your experience and skill level? So let's just say you're a 15-year family law lawyer, and you're, you know, operating in Orlando, Florida. I'm just making that up. I have no idea where everybody's on the call. I know there's a whole bunch of you on the call. I don't know where you're all from. So if someone's sitting there and you're a 15-year practitioner in Orlando, Florida, family law, I don't know that. I'm just making this up. And let's just say that you're looking around and, you know, you're board certified, you belong to all the right clubs and associations to say that you can charge the most in your marketplace. And let's just say for fun, for you to hire somebody at your point in time, it's a $200,000 compensation package with benefits and everything on top of that. And so it's $200,000 minimum to replace you. So that's your first level. That would be a great base compensation if that's what it costs to replace you. On top of that, you make a 35% profit margin. That would put you in the 7, 8, and 9 category. That means that you're paying yourself what you should be making in the marketplace, plus making a decent profit on top of that. 10 and 11 and 12 is really a whole different ballgame for a lot of lawyers. And this is one kind of freaks people out. And there's a lot of, I should say a lot, because I know a lot of lawyers personally that are doing this. They're in our group programs, our little programs. So when I say a lot, and I may say I know 100 lawyers personally that are doing this. More than half of their income is derived from profit centers in the law firm and not from their personal production. That means more than half of what they're personally taking home, they didn't generate in billable hours or in contingency fee work. They actually have profit centers in the team that make the firm money, and it operates like a business. It throws down money to the bottom line, and they get half of what they make from other people's work. Basically, the ideal capitalistic dream. They're paying other people well, and those people are making a profit for them, and they're making their money kind of like an investor would inside their own firm. So this would be a standard that would be considered best practice, because the firm is less and less dependent on the lawyer. 1, 2, and 3, the lawyers, it's a very dependent law firm. If the lawyer doesn't show up, we make no money. 7, 8, and 9, when we're 7, 8, 9, we might be able to take some time off, but not considerable. But 10 and 11 and 12, if you're scoring in that category, that's pretty darn good. So let's go ahead and score yourself. Put down whatever you're at. So in my hypothetical here, I'm giving myself a 3. All right. So 2, time management. Time management. I get in early, stay late. I work most weekends. If I'm not in the office working, I'm on my phone or checking my email while out of the office. This is the person that while they're drinking coffee first thing in the morning, picks up their cell phone and starts to check their email. They waste their most constructive thinking time in the morning, either in the office or at home, by checking their email. Terrible mistake, especially when you're running and gunning. Unless there's something critical or crucial, I totally get that. But it's a terrible waste of your best thinking time. I'd rather have you working on your most opportune cases or your biggest opportunities or most important projects first thing. But anyhow, that's just a side note. So score yourself there, 1, 2, or 3. 4, 5, and 6 will be, I work a lot, but I take at least 1 2-week vacation annually. When I'm off, I seldom check email or phone messages and only deal with emergency issues. So you have to score yourself where you feel like you're there. 7, 8, and 9. I don't work weekends. I have a 4-day work week. I average 4 weeks off a year. While I'm off, I don't check email or phone messages. So this would be on the upper end of time management. This is somebody that's able to run their life and run their practice well enough that they're able to get good caliber time off. And when I say no email or phone messages, it's an important distinction. There's lawyers that say, well, I take time off all the time. And I'm like, great, you do? How much time do you get off? Oh, I get 3 to 4 weeks off easy a year. I said, great. So during the time that you're off, where are you? Oh, I'm on vacation. I'm at Lake Tahoe, and I'm having a great time at Lake Tahoe. Great. So that means when you're at Lake Tahoe, you're not doing emails or phone calls. No. I'm working about 2 hours a day. I'm doing emails and responding to phone calls and talking to the office and talking to clients. And then I have to point out, well, that's not vacation. That's working remotely. There's a big distinction, because for you to actually have a jump in creativity, a jump in your thinking, the jump in your ability to solve complex problems, your brain needs time to heal. Your brain needs time to recover and rejuvenate. Now, I can list 10 books and a half a dozen studies that support this, but the bottom line is, to actually improve cognitive function, your brain needs a break, and it needs to do something other than solve complex legal work. And interestingly enough, the most creative lawyers are the ones that usually take more time off. So when you're looking at this, you may be thinking, well, I'm one of those lawyers that can't do this because I'm so critical and so important to the law firm that only I can respond to emails, only I can check voicemails, only I. That's an ego issue. It means that you're created a law firm where it's completely, utterly dependent on you, and you need that type of reinforcement for your own emotional validation. It just means that you have no other purpose in life than work really busy and hard as a lawyer. That's basically it. And now that may work for you. That's totally good. But if you're looking at where you score on the spectrum, don't cheat. Don't cheat. You would score probably a 1, 2, or 3 because you can't get away from your electronic leash. You can't get away from email and phone. And if you can't, then you can't take a vacation. And you got to tell the truth about that. And you have to be honest about it. So I'd score yourself a 1, or 2, or 3 if you can't go for 24 hours or 48 hours without checking your email or talking to people on the phone about the practice. And that's the truth. You just got to be honest about it. So good. The upper end, I take 175 days off a year, no email, no phone call, and the firm works fine, if not better, as opposed to when I'm there. When I'm off, I don't check email, do client work, or take phone calls. We do have quite a few lawyers that are in this category where they can take significant blocks of time off. Why can they do that? Because their law firm works without them. They've had to break away from the gravitational pull of their own ego being the centrifugal force that spins the whole law firm around them. And you have to take a step back and say, well, what type of life do you want to lead? What type of life do you want to lead? What type of focus do you want to have? So these are fairly significant shifts in thinking around time management. Now, under there's probably 50 to 100 different time management skills under each scorecard that we could talk and break apart, but I don't think we need to do that on today's call. I think what we really need to do is have you just look, where am I at, tell the truth, self-score. So in this case, this person gave themselves a 5. They're firmly saying, well, I'm taking 2 weeks off, I'm making progress. I get nailed a couple times by phone calls and emails when I'm on vacation, but ultimately I'm doing really well. Number 3 on this category is my great team. And this is probably one of the most critical elements, as I talked about this at the very beginning, my team. So I avoid hiring, training, and managing people because no one can be trusted to do the work and handle the firm's clients as well as me. I can't find anyone good to hire. So if this is where you're at, score yourself. 4, 5, and 6. I am constantly frustrated. I think I may have adopted my team. I feel like I'm often cleaning up their methods, and I'm frustrated by constant interruptions throughout the day. Now, adoption, if any of you have heard me speak in the past about team, this is a running joke for me. It's a running joke inside our family, in our client family, so to speak, in Atticus. I really joke that lawyers don't hire. At the end of the day, lawyers adopt. Most lawyers don't hire and manage people, they adopt. And what they do is they adopt someone and use kind of like a friendship template or a family template to try and control them or manipulate them to do what they want. How you can tell you've adopted an employee is if you're afraid to confront them or hold them accountable about something. If you can't hold someone accountable, if you can't confront them about a behavior like being late all the time or doing something that you've asked them not to do, and you're afraid to do that, then you're not managing them, you've adopted them. You're treating them like a family member, not an employee or a critical team member. So that's what I mean by adopted. 7, 8, 9, my team understands where we're going. We have weekly team meetings. My team takes delegation well and handles basic customer service issues without me, and they understand our workflow. All right, so score yourself here. This is a pretty straightforward one. And then 10, 11, and 12. This one's a little interesting. This one gets a lot more fun for me. My team is self-managing. They are clear on their revenue targets and understand what is crucial to their performance. I constantly receive compliments from others about them. So in this case, the team knows what they're performing towards, which makes somebody a lot more self-managing. They understand what their revenue targets are, which means the lawyer has to think through, what the profit margin needs to be, what the production needs to be, what the person needs to be doing, and can delegate into that process. And they receive compliments, meaning that they've got a good forward-facing customer service approach. So, this to me would be a higher level score, be more reflective of best practices. Okay, terrific. So go ahead and score yourself on this, see where you're at. Just tell the truth. In this case, I gave this one a 4. Great. Now let's go to the next one. Process and workflows. I don't have any systems or checklists or processes to handle workflow or customer service. We either don't have or use an office procedure manual. So what do I mean by that? So some law firms will spend the time to create procedure manuals on how to handle certain things inside the practice. That could be reflective of a system, a process. It could be done by a checklist. There's many ways of doing this. But if you don't have a system or process that you can teach your team, then you are the person that they've got to come to find anything out. And if you do have an office procedure manual, that's great, but you have to use it. I've actually talked to law firms where they say, well, I have an office procedure manual. And I said, that's terrific. Do you use it? They're like, oh, yeah. I said, well, when's the last time you used it? Like you guys used it in a meeting or one of your staff used it? And the lawyer looks at me and their head tilts, kind of like what my dog does when it hears a really funny noise. The head tilts just to the side, and they go, well, what do you mean? I said, well, when did you actually use it? He goes, well, we have one, we just don't use it. You don't have one. If you're not using it, you don't have one. You just have to tell the truth. I don't have one. I kind of have one. I started one. It's on my hard drive somewhere on the shelf somewhere, but I'm not using it. So just score yourself a 1, 2, or 3 there. 4, 5, and 6, we have document checklists and workflows, which are kept in a central location. Occasionally, I must remind my team where they're at when they come in and ask me how to do something. 7, 8, 9, our workflows and systems are great. My team uses them and looks for ways to improve them. If they've got a question, instead of interrupting me, they always go there first. So the team knows instead of coming to you, the operation systems can be trusted, the checklist can be trusted, the process can be trusted, and they know to go there. 10, 11, and 12, we have a visual workflow process. And this one's cool. This one I really like because the distinction here is visual workflow versus a written workflow. Now, the visual workflow is much different than the typical law firm. A visual workflow is typically going to be a flow chart that breaks down how a process works. Visual workflows are more valuable in my mind because a written workflow is really how we're taught as lawyers to think. And as lawyers, we're trained to write and we're trained to, we're trained to communicate in writing and we're trained to communicate verbally. And that's a challenge for us when we talk to non-lawyers because the rest of the world thinks visually and communicates visually. So 76% of the population communicates visually. And of course, there we are as lawyers communicating verbally and in writing. So if you really want to have a breakthrough in teaching your team to communicate, follow workflows, shift them from written process to visual process. So you actually have a visual workflow. This way, it will have a greater impact and it will speed up your training process. So in this case, 10, 11, 12, I want you to have a visual workflow. And when a new person joins the firm, you begin your training with a visual workflow because they'll learn it faster, quicker, and easier. It'll be so much easier on them. If there's a system or process breakdown, it's brought up immediately, and the team works to improve the process. So instead of the team bringing you the breakdown, the team knows how to solve the breakdown and work the process themselves. So great. So score yourself here. In this case, we'll give a 6. Great. The next one is, we're going to jump down to the next category, which is marketing to new prospects. So for marketing new prospects, it's a pretty critical element. It's a critical element to having a very successful firm. Most lawyers don't actively market. And it's clearly a challenge because it impairs your cash flow and impairs your growth. So this is our first category. Marketing to new prospects. I have no time to market. If I did, I wouldn't do it anyway. I would rather just practice law. Okay, great. If that's what your mindset is or what you're thinking is, score yourself 1, 2, or 3. 4, 5, and 6 is I have marketing opportunities that come to me. I'm happy to reactively take on my marketing opportunities, but I'm not proactively seeking or growing my marketing opportunities. So this is where you're reactively receiving work and reactively receiving marketing opportunities, but you're not proactively going out there creating. 7, 8, and 9, I know what to say, when to say it, how to say it when it comes to marketing. However, I know that there's some areas where I could use some improvement in my marketing. So Go ahead and score yourself there, 7, 8, 9, if you think you're in one of those categories. And then the last one, 10, 11, and 12. I have a strategic approach to marketing. I receive a consistent amount of high caliber new business. My competitors are jealous and annoyed with my marketing success and market dominance. This would be a 10, 11, or 12. I know quite a few law firms that are in this position. Their competitors will basically say it's unfair. Their competitors will say, it's not right. Their competitors will say, I really don't like that person because they're kicking my butt in the marketplace. Well, it's because they've worked really hard at having a market dominant approach to marketing, and they've earned it. It's not something that was given to them. It was something they earned. So if you want to be in that category, it's something that's earned, not given. So score yourself wherever you think you might be there. 10, 11, 12 is the upper level score, obviously. So in this example, I went with 7. So go ahead and take a moment and score yourself. Wonderful. I don't want to rush you through this too fast. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to score and think about this and pay attention. Great. Let's go to marketing and prospect conversion process. So it's one thing to go out there in the marketplace and market. It's a whole other thing to have a process to bring prospective clients into the pipeline. And I use this vocabulary word on purpose. I use prospect versus client because they're not a client until they actually hire. So a lot of lawyers will run around saying, well, I market to my clients. No, you don't market to your client. You're marketing to prospect. There's a big distinction. A client, someone who's hired you. Everyone else is a prospect. So when we look at this, I just want you to kind of be honest with yourself if you can, saying, okay, how am I doing with prospects versus existing clients? There's a distinction between the two. So marketing and prospect conversion process. I do all my marketing meetings, initial meetings, and manage all marketing projects. All marketing depends on me. My marketing depends on my cash flow. When I don't have any cash flow, I market, which is why a lot of lawyers have a herky-jerky cash flow. Their cash flow is inconsistent. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Is because their marketing is inconsistent. Their prospect conversion process is inconsistent. They only get serious about it when they see that their cash flow is dipping. And you can see this with a lot of lawyers. You can actually see the peak and valleys in their cash flows because they're peak and valleys in their marketing. So if you're having peak and valley cash flow, it's because you have peak and valley marketing typically. 4, 5, and 6. My marketing efforts, including my website, don't bring me the right kind or enough clients. I know what to do, but I'm either failing to do it or, quote, too busy to do it. And overall, I'm not getting a good return on investment with my marketing efforts. So I put too busy in quotes here on purpose because a lot of lawyers will say I'm too busy to market until they have a cash flow crisis. Then they call us and say, I'm having a cash flow crisis. And I need your help. Well, usually by the time someone's having a cash flow crisis, there's not much we can do because they're already in trouble. We can work them through it, but it's much harder then. And a cash flow crisis is quite frankly the financial equivalent of a heart attack. So if you lose blood to your heart or you have a rupture in an aorta, you're having a heart attack. You're having a serious, significant health crisis. When a law firm has a cash flow crisis, you're cutting off the blood flow to the law firm. And you're having a cash flow crisis, which is the equivalent of a financial heart attack, which, if it's severe enough, could give you an emotional heart attack, clearly, a literal physical heart attack. So when you're looking at this, I want you to think more and more about your cash flow as your heart flow to your firm, and it's critical. If you're too busy to take the time to market, if you're too busy to time to think these issues through, then you're not going to get serious until you have a heart attack, a cash flow crisis, and then you'll get serious, and then you realize, I don't want to do this anymore. So it takes sometimes lawyers to have a serious heart attack financially before they get serious about their marketing. I've seen it over and over and over. I can do a workshop and talk to lawyers about this, and they say, well, you don't understand. I'm too busy to work with you guys. I'm too busy to do marketing. I'm too busy, too busy, too busy. I got it. I totally got it. I understand. You're too busy. The truth is, it's not a priority. You know, if you knew what it was going to take to get ahead of a cash flow crisis and you're not willing to do it, you know, you deserve it. Quite frankly, you totally deserve it because you did it to yourself. It's no one else's fault but your own because you're too busy to tell the truth about it. So if you're looking at having a cash flow crisis or cash flow crisis in the past, your solution is consistent marketing and a decent prospect conversion process. Pricing falls into that, niching falls into that, but if you're not willing to do the work and take the time and reallocate your priorities, you're going to have another one. And it's not market driven, it's business driven. It's not market driven, it's business driven. It's you doing it to yourself, not the market doing it to you. 7, 8, and 9. We have a marketing prospect to client conversion process. We know what our best clients look like. We know what an ideal referral source looks like. And our pricing is excellent. We're very happy with our pricing of our services. Whether it's hourly or fixed, it doesn't matter. Contingency is a whole ball game, but you know, you're happy with how you're pricing your services. Our gold standard for marketing, it's my partner, Mark Powers, who founded the company, brilliant man, and his partner, Sean McNallis, the two of them founded the company. They wrote a wonderful book on marketing. And in their marketing book, one of the things they said is the gold standard is 3 marketing contacts per week. So, you know, if our gold standard is if you're looking to go out and market, we'd like to see 3 marketing contacts per week. Now, a marketing contact is not having lunch with the same friend over and over and over. A marketing contact is actually seeing someone who could either send you business or introduce you to someone that can send you business, or there's someone that's sending you business. If they're a friend that's not sending you business, then they're a friend, but that's not a marketing contact. You're wasting that lunch spot or that coffee spot or whatever on a non-marketing contact. So you have to be truthful about that. I went to law school, and when I went to law school, I made a lot of friends and kept some good friends over the years, but some of them are terrible marketing contacts. Some of them can't run their practice. They're great lawyers, but they just can't run their practices to save themselves. And of course, even though I do this for a living, since I'm their friend, I am in an awkward spot where, you know, they won't listen to me. They may ask my questions and I may say, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And they'll say, well, I don't want to do that. That's a lot of work. And then I'm like, well, great. Then you're kind of stuck back where you're stuck at. So let's look at this next one, 10, 11, and 12. We have a marketing and conversion machine. We can influence an uptick in new business. Our conversion process is amazing, and at least 80% of our initials are done by non-lawyers. Now, the gold standard for me in most law firms is when you're doing initial meetings with tire kickers, people that are uneducated, people that are not in a position. When I say uneducated, I don't mean they don't have, they're not well academically educated. I mean, they don't understand what it is you do and how you do it. And that from my perspective, they're not educated on what you do and how your problems, how you can help them solve problems. That's what I mean by uneducated. And they have low trust levels. They typically are not quality, high caliber clients. In that case, I really think a non-lawyer is a great way of doing an initial meeting. Now, when you do an initial meeting with a non-lawyer, so you set up non-lawyer initials, you're not teaching the non-lawyer to answer legal questions. You're typically teaching the non-lawyer to do 4 things. Number 1, you're having the non-lawyer help the person clarify what their problems are. So that's the first P of the 4 Ps I talk about here. What are the problems? 2 is, what is your process to help them solve the problem? 3 is, if you're not a contingency firm, we're going to talk about pricing. The pricing might be hourly or fixed. So what's your pricing? And 4th, what's the first step of the process to proceed? So how do we proceed in solving the problem? So you can design a non-lawyer meeting where they can address those 4 critical issues inside of initial consultation to explain process, discuss problems, discuss process, and talk about pricing. Now, if you haven't worked on your pricing, you haven't spent any time on price sheets or how to price your services, and you're just doing it all through mood billing, like you walk into the meeting and you talk to a person and you make up a price, that's mood pricing. That's mood billing. That's not a pricing philosophy. And as long as you're doing it that way, you'll never be able to teach a non-lawyer to do an initial meeting. It takes some work. Typically, most firms I've worked with take somewhere between 9 months to a year before they're ready to have non-lawyers do initials, because they have to fix a lot of things in their process to do that. So before a lot of you are freaking out and calling the bar and saying, oh my God, he's having non-lawyers do initials, be really clear that we've gone through the ethics of this. A non-lawyer can totally do initials as long as they're not answering legal questions. So you may want to ask yourself, if you're talking to clients and you're answering legal questions during a initial meeting with a prospect, and it's a free initial consultation, it's no longer a prospect once you answer that legal question out to the client. You're ethically and, quite frankly, legally bound to whatever advice that you gave to them, regardless of whether they're giving you true information. So I would assert that most lawyers who accuse me or accuse this process of being unethical are actually not really doing a great job thinking through what they're doing in their initial meetings. They haven't really some time to think through, what should I be doing in an initial meeting? How should it work? So we could probably, goodness, I could probably spend a day just on how to improve initial meetings. I think one of our Atticus Advantage webinars is 10 ways to improve initial meetings. So we could have fun just on that, but we're not going to do any more on that today. So score yourself. Tell the truth. Where am I? Let's give yourself a score. Great. And then our last category for the scorecard today is my mindset. What is your mindset? What is your mindset? So your mindset might be, well, I'm a great lawyer. I only want to be a great lawyer. I don't have a mind for business. And I believe the better legal technician you are, the more money you can make. If that's the case, score yourself 1, 2, or 3. 4, 5, and 6. I know it's a business, but I didn't know how to grow the business. I like being the hero of my story, the person that does everything. I'm the Batman of my law firm. I get to be the superhero and come to the client's rescue. Only I can respond to emails. Only I can draft whatever. Only I can do this. And consequently, you enslave yourself by being the hero of the story. And I don't know how to get out of this trap. 7, 8, 9. I focus daily on my marketing, time management, profitability, and staffing skills. I'm successful by anyone's standard, but the firm is still dependent on me. So I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I'm doing well in all the other categories, but it's still dependent on me. 10, 11, and 12. My mindset is different. I focus every day on building a market dominant firm that doesn't depend on me. I'm focused on building a great team, a marketing machine, and strong profits without me. So go ahead and score yourself. Terrific. So either that tallies up automatically for you if you're doing on the Excel, or you can tally it later, whatever you want to do, or you can tally it now. But what do these rankings really mean? Well, in creating the score sheet or the scorecard, really what we did was said, well, 1 to 3 is that you acknowledge your evidence that you're struggling with an issue and that you're producing poor results and you got really no plan to improve. 4 to 6 means that you're not really failing per se, but you're actually frustrated with your firm's performance on this issue. You need to be really looking at some of the 4 cornerstone elements that we talked about in the beginning of the call and really figuring out how to put these 4 cornerstone skills in place. 7, 8, and 9, it means you're doing well overall. I would say that, you're probably in the upper 10 to 20% in the marketplace as far as practice management skills. I wouldn't say you're the best, but I'd say you're upper third at least. However, there's still room for significant improvement. And are you committed? And you should be committed to improving that. And you're probably at a point where you can launch an improvement plan to really push it up. And then 10, 11, and 12 is where you pretty much mastered the issue. Typically, you're going to probably be ready for a bigger game because you're at a point where if you've mastered those issues, you're probably going to play in a rarefied air of other lawyers that play in those best practice areas. If you're not there yet, you can work your way there. But if you're playing in that realm, you need to be working with other lawyers that play in that realm too. So what does this mean? Here's what I recommend. You've kind of done exercise 1, which is putting together scores. Well, like going through the scorecard, what I'd like you to do is look at this and say, what was my lowest score? So look at your scorecard and say, what's your lowest score? What's your lowest score? Then ask yourself why. The why is critical. So if you are low on your time management score and you got like a 1 there, a 2 there, a 3 there, When I talk about the practice growth diagnostic towards the end of the call, you want to take advantage of it to figure out what's going on. Why are we having such a low score there? The next one is exercise 3, which is what score was your highest? Why? Because you want to know that. Which one are you doing the best at? Because that's something that you want to leverage. You're doing really well in one. You want to make sure you keep doing really well in one. You may want to improve your lowest while at the same time protecting your highest. And then what I'm going to suggest you do out of this call is ask yourself, what is the most important action I can take to improve my lowest score? So if I look at the score, what's the most important action I can take to improve my lowest score? What can I do? And I would suggest that you not think about that. I would suggest that you write it out. It's really important. It takes the vague, ambiguous thinking of what you're going to do, moves it up to the prefrontal cortex, which is the highest element of thinking in your brain. It's where your high judgment and reasoning skills reside. And once you write it, it forces the thought into your prefrontal cortex, which I would really recommend that you write it to do that. So what's next for you? So you're on this Advantage call with us. You did the scorecard. You're wrestling with the scorecard. You're thinking about it. What's next for you? My recommendation is that you take advantage of an offer I'm about ready to give you, which is I'm going to have Jeff, who you heard at the beginning of the call, and Larry, who are two just remarkable human beings, reach out to you and ask you how you did on the scorecard. Talk to them about what was the lowest score and why it was the lowest score. And if you think it perhaps gave you a wake-up call and alerted you to where you need to focus your efforts, I'm going to recommend that you invest into a practice growth diagnostic. And a practice growth diagnostic is a very modest investment. It's basically $295. And it focuses on, first, what is your DISC? And your DISC profile basically is really figuring out what is a critical strength of yours and how do we maximize that strength so that we get you running with the wind, not against the wind. 2, get an assessment where your practice at now. So when you talk to the coach or the client services person, the client services director, could be Daniel or Denise, who are fantastic at this. You can talk to them about what you scored on the Solo Practice Scorecard and assess where you're at in your practice. We have a whole written process for that. And it kind of dives down to the 4 cornerstones that we talked about, the foundations for practice growth. And then they're going to give you their feedback on what they hear and see. And then at the end of the call, or the diagnostic, you're going to really go through the 3 most important impactful actions. So if you go through talking about what your DISC is, assessing where your practice is at, listening to what the coach or consultant tells you about it, then agree to take action in 3 areas. Now, your investment on this is pretty straightforward. It's $295, which for most lawyers is about 1 billable hour, and includes a DISC assessment and basically a 1 hour, teleconference with one of the practice growth diagnostic advisors, which more than likely for you, if you've been on this webinar, will be Daniel or Denise. Fantastic people. If you talk to Larry and Jeff and you take the phone call, they can help you sort out which one's best for you. But ultimately, I'm going to recommend that either is best because I'd rather have you take action than not. And if you just want to go to our website and get started, you go to atticusadvantage.com. While we have a couple of different websites, you can go to atticusadvantage.com and just get started. Click on this. You basically can self-assess where you're at. Click the video and learn more about what a practice growth diagnostic is. But if you register for today and you talk to Jeff or Larry, I'm going to include the time management book that I mentioned earlier on in our call today in the webinar, which is the one that Mark Powers and Sean McNallis wrote. Fantastic book. It's consistently the top-selling book in the legal industry for time management. Fabulous book. It is about a $90 book. It's included in today's diagnostic. It's included in today's offer to you if you take advantage of today's offer from Jeff and Larry to do a practice growth diagnostic. If you're like, I'm not so sure if that works, I'm going to invite you to come to a workshop. I'm going to invite you to come to the Double Your Revenue workshop. We have 3 of them upcoming, and this is a great one-day workshop that you can look at about how you double your firm's revenue. And we have 3 of them upcoming. We have one in August in Chicago that will be led by Mark Powers. Mark is fantastic at this. If you get a chance, if you want to come to one that Mark teaches. Then we have another one a few days later in Boston. And then the last one of the year will be in November, and that'll be led by me, Steve Riley, in Orlando. So, you have 3 upcoming workshops. Check them out. The price points on that are pretty straightforward. You can check them out on the Atticus Online website and see if that's something that you want to invest in and do. The one thing I'm going to recommend that you don't do is take time to think about it. I know this sounds crazy, but I am stunned at how many lawyers that I've talked to over the years, and they've either attended, the Atticus Advantage webinars, they've heard me speak or one of the other coaches speak. And they come up to me and they say things like, well, 2 years ago, I did and this is a true story. 2 years ago, I sat and heard your presentation, and 2 of my friends were there too, and they signed up to work with your company. One just took a month off, and the other one's not doubled, but he had quintupled his revenue. And I attended the same workshop, and I haven't taken time off. I'm still working the same way I was 2 years ago, and I'm not making any more money. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, really? What have you been doing since you attended that workshop 2 years ago? I've been thinking about it. Thinking about it's the booby prize. Thinking about it gets you nothing. It's action is where you learn. You have to take some form of action to move your life forward. Thinking is a wonderful way of creatively procrastinating and making you feel good about it, but you learn nothing from thinking. Thinking is the booby prize in life. You think, act. Act produces learning. So you think, then you act, and then you learn from the action. Most lawyers waste 10 years thinking about something. So I'm just going to encourage you to take some action. Don't fall for the 90-day think about it program. Take some action, take advantage of the Practice Growth Diagnostic, and move forward in some way, shape, or form. And with that, thanks for attending. I really enjoyed sharing with you today the Practice Growth. I really appreciate the time that you took in sharing with you the Solo Practice Scorecard and talking about some of the cool things that we do in Atticus and some of the cool things other lawyers are doing. With that, Jeff, I'm just going to turn to you and see if we've got any questions. If we don't, we'll just call it a day.
Very good. I did see one hand raised, and Clint Dalton and Mark Johnson each have their hand raised. Clint, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so that you can ask your question now.
Clint, are you with us? All right, Clint, you may be muted on your end.
Oh, okay. So Clint typed his question in. He just wanted the dates for Boston, which I believe is the 30th of August.
I'll back up, Clint. Thank you. August 30th. And you can go to the Atticus Advantage webinar and go ahead and directly register on the webinar. The Atticus Advantage website and register directly on that website. Yeah. Boston's a great choice. Mr. Powers will be leading that one. You will not be disappointed. Oh, and if I didn't mention it, all these are money back guaranteed. All these are money back guaranteed. Now, the truth is, in 10 years, we've had to give anybody money back, but these are all money back guaranteed workshops. Jeff, I am tired this afternoon. I'm falling over myself trying to speak clearly. What's our next question, buddy?
There was one other hand raised by Mark Johnson. Mark, I'll go ahead and unmute you now so you can ask your question.
Hello, you talked about 4 Ps, and I was wondering if you could review that once again.
Sorry, Mark. Say that again. I'm sorry, but I spoke over you. Say it again. What's your question?
Let me see if this works. You talked about 4 Ps when talking to clients.
Yes.
I was hoping
absolutely.
You could do that once again.
Yeah, it's actually, I appreciate the question. I'll actually add a P that I left out, okay? But first one for me is, what is the client's problem? So if you're doing a non-lawyer initial, you're really trying to clarify what is the client's problem from their perspective. Now, as a lawyer, you and I both may see a real issue. They may be complaining about sniffles, and we actually see kind of a spot on the X-ray that needs to be addressed. But really getting the client to discuss the problem from their perspective. The second part of that is process, and you're really explaining what your process is to solve that problem. And a law firm, I don't know type of practice you have, but you're explaining what the process is that you'll help them go through. The next one is price. What are the price for your services? What do you charge to solve that problem for them? And the next P for me is proceed. This is how we can proceed, how we can move forward with that person. Now, buried in there is a one that between problem and process, that if I'm doing a live event, I may talk about permission, which is, you can save a lot of time in initial consultation by the following question, which might be, do I have permission to ask you the difficult questions first? And I see lawyers, especially on the estate planning side, they go like these 3-hour rapport building initial meetings, which really aren't great meetings. They're more like hostage negotiations where they're holding someone hostage for 3 hours until the person hires them. I've seen other lawyers go through initial meetings in 30 minutes to an hour by just being, asking the client permission to ask really hard questions up front. So those are the 4 to 5 P's of initial meetings. Does that help? Okay. If it doesn't help, let me know. But you might have muted or you might have run out of time.
I did mute Mark.
Great. Does that help?
Sorry, Mark.
Okay, great. So you muted Mark.
Thank you so much.
That's okay, good. Terrific. I just want to make sure I answered this question, Jeff. All right, wonderful. Jeff, do we have any other questions?
We do have one other from Beth Mulcahy asking how you're using the DISC personality assessment to evaluate the firm's leader. Do you suggest that the firm's leader also do the DISC assessment on the team so that you can better understand strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, great question, Beth. The answer is yes to all the above. So with the DISC assessment, what we're trying to do is figure out what our lawyer's strength is. So if I have a lawyer that's a very high DI, let's say, so that means a dominant influencer on the DISC, that is someone that's a hard charger that loves people. They're going to be a great marketer, but their attention to detail is going to be very, very poor. It's not because they don't have the capability of doing it, it just doesn't really interest them. So in that case, I would be looking at making sure their right-hand person might be a high CS on the DISC, so it might be a high conscientious steadfast. And that person is going to pay attention to process, procedure, and detail. So if I'm building a firm where I'm combining a 1-2 punch of a really strong marketer and a really strong, in that case, might be a really strong trial lawyer, family law lawyer, I'm going to give them a right-hand person that's going to be highly analytical and very process-driven. So if I'm building a team, I think, and that's one of the reasons we include the DISC assessment in the Practice Growth Diagnostic, is I want my lawyer who we're working with, coaching and helping them develop their practice, to be really aware of what their strength is and to be really aware of what their team strengths are, so you can build a team that you're playing off the strengths, conscious strengths, not unconscious strengths, but conscious strengths, because it really starts to give you an advantage in the marketplace. It gives you the capability of talking to each other more effectively, gives you the ability of appreciating other people's talents and strengths, it gives you the ability of really playing at a whole different level than most law firms play at. And I really think it gives you, quite frankly, if you're conscious about it, and that's why we call these the Atticus Advantage webinars, it gives you a significant advantage in the marketplace, because most lawyers are either ignorant of the issue, don't care about the issue, or arrogant about the issue when it comes to really how do you build a team that supports you and puts your wind at your back, not your face. So great question, Beth. I hope I answered it, but strongly would encourage you to take advantage of the Practice Growth Diagnostic. So if Larry calls you or Jeff calls you, talk to them, take advantage of it. You get the DISC, and you'll talk to somebody on our team who really understands how to help a law firm utilize the DISC. We are the largest provider of DISC profiles for lawyers in the world. We've done so many of them. One of our shareholders is just a guru in this particular area, especially when it comes to lawyers. So we have found it to be kind of a secret weapon that if you understand and you can use, it can be very effective. Okay, terrific. Jeff, you got anything else for me?
I think that is about it. I don't see any further questions having been asked. I suppose there is one other. Beth asked one other question. Do you have suggestions for handling underperformers on the team?
Yes. Part of it begins with their DISC, to figure out what their DISC is so you can talk to them differently. So you can talk to them to their profile, not away from their profile, which would be a key element, Beth. And then my suggestion, just because we're out of time today, is for you to take advantage of the diagnostic and talk to the person that's doing your diagnostic, because the team performance is a critical component of growth. And it's probably, I'll tell you, in the practice growth program that we do, we probably spend 20 hours to 40 hours in over a year period just talking about how to handle that one particular question. So you're not trying to avoid it. I'm just trying to figure out where I grab it and wrestle that one to the ground for you. So the only thing I tell you is, love to help you more. Meet me halfway, do a practice growth diagnostic so we can get a little bit more information and help you with a little bit more specific advice rather than me throwing some general advice to you off of a webinar. That would be my suggestion. Jeff, if it works for you, I'd say we're 7 minutes past the hour on my watch. And I thank those of you that stayed with us 9 minutes past the hour. I thank those of you that stayed with us. I hope you enjoy today's webinar. We do have an upcoming webinar next month that if you're on our email address, you will get. So if not, if you don't have that, make sure you email us at grow@atticusadvantage.com, and we'll make sure that you are added to the alert of upcoming programs and upcoming webinars that are completely at no charge for you. And Jeff, I want to thank you. Great job today. And I want to thank you for reaching out to people. And those of you that are still hanging with us, if you want to go ahead and download the handout on the Practice Growth Diagnostic and Time Management book pamphlet or handout on your go-to webinar dashboard, please do that so you can take advantage of that. With that, everybody, thank you for attending today's Solo Practice Profit Scorecard webinar, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Good job, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. Bye.